Good morning. And today, 8-2 offsuit under the gun. This is a guaranteed fold for me. We've got button open raises at 2, small blind calls. Oftentimes, bet sizing can give away some hands. We don't know about this player. I didn't take any notes, or we haven't worked through any hands with him to figure out if the two big blind bet is standard for him. Or if that's indicative of, let's say, a weaker hand. So oftentimes with a stronger hand, they'll go a little bit larger. With weaker hands, they'll go a little bit smaller, with the idea that by going smaller, they're saving some money. This guy is playing 28-13. Right now, we've got 33% on the button. That's his VPIP. Race for sin stats 50%, 1 out of 2. We could see that he has called a 2-bet 2 out of 7 times. His attempt to steal stat is 40%. So the question is, how wide do we make his range? I did something like this. It's basically all across the board. I'm going to leave everything in as if the bet sizing isn't really indicative. Maybe that is just his standard, bet size, but we're going to leave everything in. And this is 47.5, almost 48%. Could be a little bit too wide. We could probably dump some of these weaker hands here to make it closer to like 45.5%. I think I'll probably do that. I mean, it's tough to see someone raise with some of these weaker hands, but we're gonna go with that. This player's small blind playing 19-9. Not many hands on him. This will be the first hand that he's played from the small blind. So we're just going kind of flying blind. Now we do have a note, and I wonder if the note here is this hand where he's called two bet from the blind. But oftentimes, small blind tends to fold. He's got a fold to steal stat of 100%. So oftentimes it's going to be the pocket pairs. I'm going to assume he would kind of 3-bet with queens and ace queen. Although he doesn't necessarily have to do that. Maybe it's just queens plus ace king, suited aces, basically the rest of your suited broadways, some suited connectors, pocket pairs, some offsuit hands. So we'll go, this is 13.6, we'll go with it. So flop comes down ace 8-7. Now just on, thinking about ranges, this guy's going to have a massive range. This guy doesn't have as big of range. I think there is a good chance that you could be c-betting this if you are the pre-flop aggressor. If you get called, then you're kind of in a dilemma. Is he calling with like the straight or the flush or just with ace-x? Because ace-x does fit his ranges, and he's not going to fold an ace-x hand to a bet, not on the flop, and probably doesn't fold to a bet on the turn. And at this level, this 10-0, I don't think he folds on the river either. But that being said, we're not going to be c-betting our entire range here. We're going to be somewhat selective. So, top pair plus, probably not even all top pair here. I think you could have your ace king, ace queen for value. Probably your ace 10 is when you start like checking it. We could look at our flush draw. There are quite a few draws that are out there. So you got flush draw, open ender, gut shots. That's 19%. Your value is 14%. Probably not going to be betting with our sets all the way. So probably you could check with your aces, but I think you should be betting with your 7s and 8s. I think the same thing with some of the 2-pair. I don't think you're always going to be betting with ace 8, ace 7, because if you're betting with those, then you've really just kind of blocked a huge number of his hands that he could possibly have. I think pocket pair below the board could be a bet here. So I'm going to say sometimes we bet. Sometimes you bet with ace 8 and ace 7, and you're doing that for value. Get the rest of these. So that gets up to 13. So I think pocket pair below the board's probably a bluff. Maybe the bottom pair is also a bluff. So that kind of gets us a decent distribution. You can see we're c betting about 43.6%. And again, we have a huge range. So if we're going to be c betting more, if we're going to be c betting, let's say 80% of the time, 90% of the time, then that means on the turn we're only going to be barreling probably less than 50% of the time. Whereas if we're only betting, say 43% of the time, here on the flop, then on the turn we're gonna likely be betting more because we've selected our better hands and our better draws at this stage. So what did this villain do? He checks, no big surprise, and then he bets half pot. So I'm not going to select for him. I'm going to say it's going to be all top pair plus hands. I think most players check those pairs less than the top card. We're going to include his flushes, open ender, and I think we're going to include the gut shot here. Could be off. Maybe he's playing, even more hands, but we're going to be at 50% here for his range and for a half pot bet. And then villain here is going to call. So I think he's definitely probably also calling these pairs. Any of these pairs, middle pair, bottom pair. I don't know about pocket pair below the board, but I think he's also calling with flush draw. So 62%. And that's kind of what you're balancing against. You can see just right here, almost 30%. So almost 30% of all of his hands are top pair. So I mean that's a pretty big number. So he calls, turns to 3 of spades. There's a check, and then villain bets half pot again. What is he doing this with? Would he bet again with the straights and the draws? If you're betting with backdoor spade draw, yeah, I think you can continue betting here. But at the same time, and the reason I say that is because I think you fire again, and I think you're getting folds from these hands. So let's just kind of work up what he would call. He would definitely call all of his open enders. I'm not sure if he would call with a gut shot anymore, but open ender, flush draw, top pair plus. So 74.5%. He's folding 25% of the time. You're not going to be c betting very super wide because you're not going to have a massive amount of fold equity here. So for that reason, I think our top pair is probably betting. I'm not sure if he would be betting like all of the ace x hands. Maybe ace jack plus. He's betting half pot. I mean, we could scale it, but I think that like ace jack plus 2 pair set. I think the draw is probably just check behind. He's not overly aggressive. Like this guy seems to be aggressive, at least pre-flop. Flop aggression factor 14, 5, infinite. Yeah, I mean, this guy, you'd have to really consider the idea that he may be betting the turn again on a draw. 17-13 maybe as well. You can see it's not as high as this player. This guy's a yellow player. Yeah, c bet on the flop, turn river. So yeah, I just kind of think generally these more passive players are just going to check behind with their draws. So we're looking at top pair plus, I think, for him. So he bets, and now we get a raise. So this is interesting. So once you get a raise, does he raise with a flush draw? I don't think so. I think he's raising 2 pair plus. I think it's hard pressed to say that he's check raising with top pair. but I think 2 pair plus is really what he's looking at. So he makes that play. And he did a decent size, raise it up like a little bit more than 3 times the bet. And then villain calls here. So at this point, yeah, I think a lot of players will just call. I think ace jack's questionable, but I think a lot of them will be calling with that. River's queen of hearts. Villain bets 27, which is more than half the pot. I think he continues betting his 2 pair plus here in this case. They all missed. This villain calls. And question is, would he call with the top pair? Yeah, I think stubborn calls with top pair. So let's see. The hand's ace-7. He's got 2 pair, which is in his range. I mean, I guess I'm not too surprised. But then he has ace-jack, and that was the hand that we had. So he did check raise it with just a top pair, okay kicker, top pair, decent kicker. I don't like that play at all. So, we are going to take a note here. So he ended up call, button, 2 big blind, RFI, and small blind with ace, jack clubs. He is out of position. He check called 50%. Let's see here. He check raised. We'll do 3x. Check raise 50% to 3x bet. And then he bet say 66. I think that could be 66% on an ace of diamonds, 8 of diamonds, 7 of spades, 3 of spades, queen of hearts. Okay. And that's important. Check raise out of position with top pair, good kicker. Okay, so we've got his note. And then we'll take this guy's note. So he RFI 2 big blind on button with ace of spades, 7 hearts. He is in position. He bet 50%, and call 3x check raise, and then called 66%. He said, all right, so we've got that. All right, so that was the hand that we had on here where he called 2 bets from the blind with ace jack of spades. Again, we could have cheated. We could have gone back to the turn and said, well, we know he could have check raised. Would he have check raised all of them? Maybe. It just I don't like it. I don't like it. And I don't like it because if you're called, you're almost committing yourself another bet, and of course you're gonna have to have a check raise bluff. So when you think about what could he could have a 2 pair hand. He could have ace 8 of spades. He could have 9-10 of spades, 9-10 of diamonds, 5-6 of diamonds, 5-6 of spades. I think trips, I think 7s, 8s, aces, I think 7-8 for 2 pair could work. And I think the check raise might be a little bit better on the turn. So if you have trips or 2 pair, I think it might be a little bit better on the turn. However, you could easily check raise on the flop as well. And for this, I think we're gonna check this out on GTO. So I don't fault this guy. I don't like his 2 big blind bet. That's for sure. That's that raise first in, but I think his C bet was okay. His turn. And actually, you could probably go larger on that C bet. instead of half pot, you could easily go 2/3. Get larger, you get called, and then you kind of scale it back to half pot. Now at that point, the pot's going to be larger to begin with. You do have a strong hand, so let's go back to the flop. So when the flop happens, you're at 82. You should be thinking, okay, I've got two pair. How do I try to double my stack here? So I would probably go up to like 3.5 maybe. Instead of 2.5, he gets called. So now we're talking about a pot size of 12. And then with that spade, I might even go 2/3 again. So betting 8 big blinds. And then if you go 8 big blinds, he's going for check raise. So this is a spot I think I also don't really care for. He bet 5, which again, it's okay. He check raises to 16. Now the question is, he's representing a strong hand. He's representing 2 pair plus normally. Is our 2 pair with ace-7 strong? And I'm kind of thinking at that point, I have an ace blocker, I have a 7 blocker. So I think that kind of really reduces the ace-x type of 2 pair hands, which I think then means that it's more likely that he might have trips. So I was going to say, I think he should have like raised even more. So he raises 16. I think you raise up to 40 or so. You're at this point. You got 74. You could possibly raise all in at that point. But the call, I could understand where you're concerned, since you block aces, or you block those ace x hands, that it might be best just to go ahead for the check, or for the call. And then when the queen happens, he bets 27 at this point. I think you're in the same kind of boat, same thinking. Probably think you probably need to just call with your 2 pair. I think it's difficult to fold. But let's go ahead and check GTO here. So we are heads up. We are going to just go ahead and keep these ranges. So out of position definitely has a tighter range than in position player. Done. We have the board ace-7 of diamonds and 8 of spades. No. Done. We're going to build the tree 5 and 82. So starting pot 5, effective stacks 82. He's always doing 50%. Okay, so now we will edit the tree. So we want that check, and then we want I want a smaller bet size, and I want a larger bet size, because I personally think it's the larger bet size is going to be better. We're going to accept the changes, confirm, and then what we'll do is we'll run the solver and we'll be back. And we are back. Took a little bit longer, but that's expected. We've got a massive range here. All right, so we said villain was going to check, and now it's on us. Not too surprising. We're not c-betting 100%, but we are favoring that larger bet size. And you can see it sets in 2-pair. We talked about the top pair issue and how you're probably not going to be c-betting all of those top pairs. The top pair better kickers are what we're looking for. We also said 2-pair. There's some of those 2-pair that we're going to probably just check. Check behind, kind of keep our checking range still with some strength on it. Same thing kind of with our flush draws. It looks like king queen's probably a check, king jack's a check, but you can be betting king 7, queen 7, king 6, king 5 as bluffs to kind of balance. So I think initially we were drifting down into under sub 30% for the c bet as we kept reducing what our value range was versus what our semi bluff range was. So I think we were on the right track. I just kept adding stuff. Some of the weak pairs, we're not always going to be betting the weak pairs, and so forth. So definitely favors the larger bet size. So we'll say that that's what he did, bet the larger bet size, and then villain calls. Notice the check raises really just some of the sets. So eights, maybe you're checking with like a 9-8. More likely if you've got that backdoor spade draw as well, ace-8, two pair, small, but you're really not check raising a whole lot. And that kind of fits with this idea that the in position player probably isn't going to be c-betting a whole lot either. So the check call keeps his range pretty wide. All right, three spades comes out. Villain checks 100%. It's kind of what we expected. And now since we bet pretty low, now we're betting at a much higher frequency. We're almost at 50% in this point. In this case, we're betting our three of a kind. Two pair, our top pair, we're betting our good top pair, ace king, basically. Sometimes your ace queen suited. That's if you have the spade draw. You're going to have to balance those better hands with our draws. So you've got your flush draws, some of your open enders that you're betting. 10-9 isn't 10-9 off isn't a bet. And again, not all of our top pair are going to be a bet. So like ace-9, ace-10, ace-jack, those are all checks as well. So if we're going to have a top pair in our range, we probably need to have some draws in our range. And you'll note the weak pairs like the sevens are bets as well. I think we're using these sevens as bluffs. I think mostly as bluffs, but we're betting 50%. He bets, and then villain raised 29, so 29% he's raising. I could see if he had ace jack of spades, you could potentially have that as a check raise range, but you can see his check raise range again is really tight. Not even all of the trips, but it's basically two pair and trips. Some with the ace queen ace jack if you have a spade to go along with it. I mentioned like 9-8 as being like potential check raise, and I stand by that. It's well, no, I said like 9-10, 9-10 or 5-6 where you've got this draw that's also with a not only the straight draw but also the flush draw. So there's small amounts of that, but GTO does not like his check raise at all, and I didn't care for his check raise at all. So we're gonna say he raised, and then you've got this other guy. He had ace-7, ace-7 offsuit, and now he's again. Villain was saying GTO suggesting he just goes ahead and folds. Do have some small calls like ace of hearts and 7 of clubs. I do think he's got some blockers. He's got the ace of spade blocker. Another spade comes out, he could potentially make a bet in and get a better hand to fold. Be difficult, but GTO actually thinks he should be folding ace-7, but ace-8 on the other hand he's calling, or in some cases raising. There is a raise here. Clubs and hearts, ace-8 spades is just calling. So even once you get raised, you're really not re-raising. Aces is in there, eights is in there, and that's about it. And I think the reason was just what I said. When you have two pair, you've got ace-7, you're blocking a lot of those ace-x hands. It's making it harder for the small blind to have two pair with that ace, and thus it's more likely that he would be doing this with the trips, with pocket threes, pocket eights, probably pocket eights is what I would think, because you've got what, three combos of pocket eights versus one combo of pocket 7, one combo of pocket aces. So you're more likely to have those trips in this case, and I think that is why GTO is starting to recommend the fold with the ace-7. Villain called, so we can go on it. We can continue. So queen of hearts, and then he bets. He bets here, and then villain calls. So once he bets, you can see that ace-7, if he calls, basically a fold. ace eight's going to be a call. Not really sure why why a seven versus ace eight. It's probably just percentages. What you're calling with sevens, you're calling with eights, you're calling with 8-7 mostly. And again, if you have 8-7, if you have two pair, you're just really you've blocked a lot of two pairs that are out there. However, with 8-7, it's more likely that he could have had ace three, and that's what I would be thinking about. And even against the ace three, 8-7's behind. So that's GTO. You can see. Don't like his check raise. Not with the strength of his hand. I don't think it's strong enough for that check raise. I think there are better situations that he could have raised it had he chose to do so. But I think this should have just been a call. And then on the river, when it goes check and he bets, he could call again with the top pair good kicker and save himself some money. So how much money? Well, he bets 5 here. He calls. So now we're at a pot size of 20. And then he checks, and Villain's probably gonna bet 10. So think about what he lost, and cut it in half. So this is 11 big blinds there, and then probably another 17. So 28, almost 30 big blinds is what he would have saved. So hopefully you enjoy this. You see the GTO aspect of it. You can see what they're recommending, and you could see that check raise and GTO just really wants a strong hands, and then balance with some strong draws with that. Don't do it with a one pair hand. You'll get yourself into big trouble. Hopefully you enjoy this. If you do, you can look tomorrow for another.